Hello, fellow exiles. My girlfriend Sarah turned this closet, it's designed for like a coat closet right up by her front door, but it's near the kitchen, so she turned it into a pantry for food she's putting in jars. And she took this old shelf that she built years ago and moved it in here. The problem is that the shelf spacing isn't designed for doing the jars. I mean, you see up here we got stuff double stacked, and there's nothing keeping the jars from sliding off the front. Eventually somebody's going to get hurt. They're going to fall off. So we're going to add extra shelves to it. We're going to add some boards across the front to keep things from falling off and make it a lot safer. All right, so you want to look down the length of the board and check to see how straight it is. See how it gets all crooked and wobbly at the end? That's no good. And you also want to check this way to make sure that these sides are straight. Sometimes they'll go crooked where they were not cut by the bandsaw very well in the lumber yard or the lumber mill. All right, see this dark stripe? That's the center of the tree. You can see it here. And while this board's pretty straight right now, as soon as you get it in some place that's where the humidity changes, it's going to warp. And also, look for boards with checking. This is extreme, but any of these cracks are just going to get worse as the humidity changes. All right, Sarah's holding the other end of the board. So make our mark at 2 foot. Always do your measurements from the factory edge. We already cut on that side, so I don't want to use that in case my cut was a little crooked or something. Now, if you've already made one cut and you don't have a factory edge, you can go off of a cut you've already made. But if you have a factory edge, try to always use it. So use the square to draw it this way. Then use our square, flip it over. Not quite perfect. There we go. And these new little saws with the battery power, they're great. And when you cut through thinner, these saws are designed to cut through at their maximum depth, a 2x4. So that puts the teeth sticking way through the bottom here, and you'll get a lot of tear out. So what you do is you loosen this nut on the back here, and you turn it, and ideally you want the tips. You make adjustments to a saw or a power tool, yank the battery out or unplug it. That way you don't cut off a finger. You'll get a new nickname, Stubby. And don't pull the guard back like I just did, that's a bad habit. Make sure you hold the off cut if that's your good piece, and go slow at the end so you don't get tear out. Okay, there's 17 inches between each one of these shelves. So we want to make sure that the quart jars clear the shelf. Looks like they will. Tight squeeze for these shelves, but that'll work for now. Yep. And then put this jar up here. Yep, I was pretty sure they'd clear, but I wanted to double check and make sure. Ideally, since we want to put my halfway mark in the middle of the shelf there. Now we'll tap the shelf in place and screw it in. Okay, this shelf fit pretty tight, so we had to use the neoprene hammer to tap it in place. But if you have a shelf that fits kind of loose, you can put measure where the top of the clamp is where you want the bottom of the shelf. Put the 4 clamps in, and then just set it on the clamps while you drill it into it. And we want to go slow because I'm drilling into end grain without pre-drilling, and I don't want to split out the shelf. And for you technical people out there, I know there's no such thing as pre-drilling, because if you use a hole or drill bit to drill a hole, that is just drilling. You can't pre-drill, but that's what everybody says. I have the same opinion about the people like, oh, it's not a clip, it's a magazine. Like, yes, I know the difference, you know the difference, but don't be harping on people who don't know the technical difference. It's no big deal. So these little guys will split out. So we drilled a pilot hole and went ahead and put the screws in there. Now, the reason you want to put the screws in there is so that's one less thing you have to hold. And then put the scrap pieces on here so we can set this on here. And again, less things to hold. And that's a good height to make it so we can pull the jars out, but they're not going to fall out. If we put them right at the bottom, then the jar can, so higher up makes it harder for the jar to fall out. But too high and you won't be able to get the jar out on purpose. It goes against a wall on this side, so I want to make sure these don't stick out on this side. So I'm going to start on that side and then finish on this side. Alright, if I would have thought this through a little bit, I would have drilled this hole for the spacer we need before I cut it off the board, but we'll do it now. I'm going to hold on to it with pliers because I don't want to drill through my hand, and put this board through here so I don't drill through Sarah's table. Both of those would be a bad thing. Nope, not quite all the way through. There we go. All the way through. See? That would have went into our table. Alright, the shelf's slightly narrower, slightly less deep than the jars are. So we want to pull the shelf out a little bit from the wall. But we don't want the shelf falling over. So Sarah already put this bracket in. So that's what the spacer I just made is for. It's going to go between the wall and the bracket to give us space out against the wall and still be secure. And I'm using, for that, a deck screw. A real lag bolt would be ideal, but this is what I have. So what we're going to do is put it through there. Get it started without putting a hole in my hand. Is it spinning the right direction? Worked better if I spun the drill the right direction. But as Wrangler Star would say, I'm just a professional homeowner. And in case you're wondering, yes, there is a stud back here that I'm going into. Alright. Now we're nice and solid. It racks a little. We can probably put another one of these braces up later. But now we can get the canned goods on here and have Sarah a nice organized way to store everything. Alright, so we got all the jars back. The shelf put in, all the jars back in. They won't fall out, but you can easily pull them all out. She's got a Sharpie here so she can label them. I'm really bad at remembering to label them. And then on the door is probably 50 cord with regular mouth lids and the wide mouth lids. And then down here at the bottom, she's got 2 buckets, so she can go, every time she goes to the grocery store, she can buy beans and noodles and throw them in here for long-term storage. And then we'll put the Mylar bags in there. And whenever they fill up, you can just seal them, snap the lids on them, and put 2 more buckets in here. So thank you for joining me on the journey to use God's gifts to grow His kingdom, prepare for the future, and live a better life.